The Michigan Man Podcast, episode 120. This is the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue and welcome to this week's show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Countdown to kickoff, only 10 days. On last week's show, Michigan beat writer Kyle Meinke from AnnArbor.com previewed the offense. On today's Michigan Insider segment, we'll switch over and talk about Coach Greg Madison and the Wolverine defense. Our guest will be blogger ErocWolverine from right here at GBMWolverine. Before we join Eric, let's start as we always do though with our view from Section 17, a quick look at headlines of interest to Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Coach Brady Hoke said on Monday that he still has not arrived at a decision regarding the immediate status of running back Fitzgerald Toussaint or sophomore defensive end Frank Clark. Running back coach Fred Jackson says he's preparing Toussaint for the opener against Alabama until he hears otherwise. We would expect there will be something definitive from Coach Hoke later this week or early next week regarding both players' status. Freshman defensive lineman Andre Pipkins is back at practice following a scary injury he received in last Friday's practice. Pipkins injured his neck in practice and was then transported to the hospital for further review. He was released and was back at practice walking the sidelines later that afternoon. No word on whether he will be limited in practice this week or if he will be ready for the opener. It's better safe than sorry when it comes to this type of injury, especially with a young player. The Wolverines are rated number 8 in this week's coaches poll, even receiving one first-place vote. USC grabbed the top spot, followed by Alabama at number 2. Last year, Michigan fans were pleasantly surprised at the defensive turnaround engineered by Coach Greg Madison and his staff. The defensive line is a big question heading into the opener, of course, but the back seven is as solid as we've seen it in years. Blogger ErocWolverine from right here at GBMWolverine is our guest today on the Michigan Insider segment with our Michigan defensive preview. So don't go away, that's next here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. Joining us today on our Michigan Insider segment to preview the Michigan defense from right here at GBM Wolverine, our very own ErocWolverine. Eroc, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Always good to be on your show and good to be part of the podcast again.
Well, it's great to have you. And as you know, Eroc, last week we had Kyle Meinke on from AnnArbor.com. We took an in-depth look at the offense and the two deep. This week we're going to try that with the defense. And, of course, at this time of the year, I think we have a pretty good idea on the starting unit, but the two deep, that's a very fluid situation with practice going on. So, Eroc, let's start up front in the trenches where most of us expect is going to be the big challenge this year. And at defensive end, Craig Rowe. Talk about Craig.
Yeah, Craig, he's in a new position, and he's definitely going to be counted on. We replaced 3 starters from last year's defense, so he's one of the main guys that has to step up. He's been a contributor throughout the years he's been at Michigan. He's one of those guys that really has to take that next step to, replace the Ryan Van Bergens, the Martins, that type that we had last year. And it's just that next step he's got to make it for this defense line to be good.
And Eroc, backing Craig Rowe up, on the depth chart at least I'm looking at, Nathan Brink and Heitzman are the 2 that you see listed there. Is that pretty much the way it's shaking out as far as you know in practice so far?
Yeah, pretty much everything we've heard is, you got all these true freshmen that they make plays coming in, but Brink and Heitzman, they're the 2 guys that you keep on hearing most of. Even back to spring, they did fairly well. Brink didn't really play that much in the spring because he was injured.
So on that defensive end side, Craig Rowe is the starter, Brink and Heitzman battling for the backup roles right now. Eroc, let's move over to the other defensive end position. Frank Clark was penciled in coming out of spring football as the starter. We all know he was suspended. There are legal problems there. Brennan Byer, local kid, battling it out with him. Do you still think, and I guess we have to wait and see what happens with Frank Clark, but he's going to be the guy that starts?
I believe Byer's going to be the starter. Byer and Frank Clark were probably going to be rotating in depending on the teams they play, the scheme that we were going to play, what formations. That was probably going to be a very good combination of the rotation. Well, now the unknowns with Clark, he didn't practice the whole first week, so he's a little bit behind there. They're just starting to let him practice. So the question still is, when will they be able to play? Hope hasn't said anything one way or the other when or if they're going to be able to play this year. So you're assuming they're going to be out the first game, nothing definite, but, you're going to be counting on a true freshman probably in a backup role. At this stage at college level, you don't really want to count on is a true freshman. Byer, he probably had the advantage going into the situation with Clark, but now he's definitely, the starter for sure, and we'll have to see how it goes as the season carries on.
Let's move to the big guys down in the trenches, E-Rock, and start with a young man who we are waiting to have his breakout year finally, and that's nose tackle Will Campbell.
Will, he came in early and all the hype from recruiting sites because he was a five-star local kid, which I think really hurt him more than anything else. The situation with the coaching staff when he came in really wasn't the best fit for him either. He kind of had 2 years there where even though he was playing, he didn't play a lot, and really he's a kid for sure. By coming in early, they played him, I think, just because they told him he was going to play, but he probably shouldn't have because, honestly, he was a kid that came in who was just bigger, stronger than, anybody he went up against at his high school level, and he just dominated kids that way. And, well, you can't do that at the college level, and he learned a lot of bad habits, and it's taken quite a long time to get out of those, and it really looks like after spring and summer after seeing him, he's taken on a new attitude, and it seems like, it's really paying off. He needs to be the anchor on that defensive line. He needs to have a big year.
We expect this is going to be a big year from Will, but when you look at the backups behind Will at nose tackle, E-Rock, on my depth chart, Andre Pipkins, the freshman, was there, and of course we know in Friday's practice, Andre injured his neck, doesn't seem to be too severe. Richard Ashe was also the backup there. Has Andre been that impressive up until he got hurt?
Yeah, he's really had his moments. He's really shown, what he can do for a true freshman. He's looked good. The problem is right now, how slowly are they going to take this? Especially with anything with spinal or neck deal, they usually go real slow with the comeback. So will he be able to come back? If he doesn't practice at all this week, to me, I don't think they're going to push him into the Alabama game, but, we'll see. Richard Ashe, he's one of those players that it's time for him to step up or basically get out of the way. I hate saying that to a player, but it comes to a point where you've been in a system for 2-3 years, and if you're not doing something at a place like Michigan, there's going to be somebody behind you that's younger and is going to be pushing you out of the way. So this year for Richard Ashe is probably his make-or-break year.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The other defensive tackle, E-Rock, starting, at least we think he's starting, is Jabril Black. A lot of good things have been said about Jabril from spring. The coaching staff seems to really like what they're seeing. And then Quentin Washington and Kenny Wilkins are the three guys at defensive tackle. But talk a bit about Jabril Black and what we expect from him this year.
He's moving into a new position as well this year and moving down, which they needed to do because just of the talent and depth at that position. You got other guys like Quentin Washington. Ever since arriving, he was on the offensive side. Now he's on the defensive side. He's not really seeing a lot of time on the defensive side. So he's another one with Ashe that I believe this year it's going to be a make-or-break year for those two guys because just of the type of kids, the caliber, the talent level that Coach Hoke's bringing in with his staff in the 2013 class, he's bringing in some guys that they're either going to push these guys to start playing, or they're going to push them out of the way. These guys are either going to not be playing anymore, they're going to want to transfer, they just want to get their education at Michigan. Who knows? They need to start playing, and this is the year to do it, because after this year, they're not going to be able to have a chance like they are right now. And to me, Black is probably the second biggest key for the defensive line with Will Campbell. They need those two guys to really plug up the inside, the middle, and the running game to let the linebackers make the plays. Those two guys need a big year.
Okay, our guest on the show today is ErocWolverine from right here at GBMWolverine as we review the defense. Eroc, let's focus on our linebacking situation. The back seven we all feel pretty darn good about. But let's, as a group, look at these guys. Middle linebacker, Kenny Demmons. Weak side linebacker, Desmond Morgan. And strong side backer, Jake Ryan. Your thoughts on those guys?
All three are back from being starters last year, which is always a good thing. They're probably, like you were talking about, the back seven with the defensive backs. They're all starters. They're all back, and it should be the strength of the team. Jake Ryan, he's going to be a player that's going to be used in multiple roles, we believe. He's going to have his hand down rushing. He's going to be up. It just depends on the situation. A lot of times they go into a nickel package, and what they do, they kind of go smaller, and they'll put like Jake Ryan with his hand down and having him blitz. So he's going to be a key guy. Desmond Morgan, who had a great year for a guy that came in with not much hype. He came in and really did well. And then you got Kenny Demmons that's been around forever, it seems. He's been a starter at Michigan for quite a long time. He is one heck of he stops to run really well, and that's something that's going to be a key this year with having the younger, less experienced guys like Black and Will Campbell. He's going to need to step up and help that running game right up the middle. For some of the backups, like Brandon Hawthorne, who really turned it on this spring, he actually looked pretty good this spring and looked like he's gained a little bit of weight. His frame doesn't hold a lot. He looked a lot better, and so did Cam Gordon. Cam Gordon was pretty impressive, and also was true freshman Joe Bolden. Watch Joe play, you just kind of remember old-time football where he might not be the most impressive player. He might not, have the big stats, but he's always around the football. He makes plays. He'll never impress you with his combine, his 40-yard dash. For whatever reason, he kind of reminds you of Jordan Kovacs in a way. He's a smart kid, and he's always around the football, and he should be in the rotation, we believe, this year. Probably contribute quite a bit on special teams. Okay, so we're pretty solid at that linebacking core. Everyone agrees. Let's move to the back, and as a group, look at these guys. Free safety, Thomas Gordon. Strong safety, Jordan Kovacs. And the two corners, Blake Countess and J.T. Floyd. Again, we got all four players back from last year's starting defensive backfield, which is, again, a plus. Thomas Gordon has really stepped it up. I think he's going to be the player that Michigan thought he'd be, last year. He seems like he's playing now and having fun, where last year he was tentative. He wasn't sure what to do. He was having problems. I think he was thinking way too much. He was trying to make sure nothing bad happened. And now he's just going out there and playing, and he knows what he's supposed to be doing. Jordan Kovacs, what can you say about this kid? I mean, he's been a starter for, 3 years now? Right. And every year, every football game, every spring, every week, for 2-3 years, all we heard about, from getting emails or questions on our message board was, when's so-and-so going to replace Kovacs? When's so-and-so going to replace Jordan? He's smart. He knows what defense everybody's supposed to be into. He helps get the calls right. He's around the ball and makes plays. Blake Countess, he's a guy probably this year that's going to be more of a lockdown type corner where they can put him on the best wide receiver and let him do his thing. J.T. Floyd, I used to get on J.T. Floyd quite a bit, but he has really improved over the last 2 years, and he should be a solid cornerback, what Michigan needs this year. Courtney Avery, who is a very solid nickelback. He is, and in Michigan's defense, Coach Madison, he loves playing 5 defensive backs a lot with that nickel package that he uses, so he's going to be playing a lot like he did last year. This is the first time in years that Michigan secondary could be described as the solid unit of the defense. I mean, they have all 4 starters back. They all have experience. They're not the liability that they used to be several years ago. So this is the year for those guys to really step it up because they're going to be counted on to help with the wide receivers on man coverage. So the defensive line and linebackers can do a lot of stunting, a lot of blitzing to try and make the quarterback react, do something quicker, and just basically get rid of the ball in a more timely fashion. The defense, to me, is going to come down to that. If we can get pressure on the quarterback, we're going to be fine. If we cannot, we could struggle. That's going to be the big question for me.
Our guest on the show today, ErocWolverine from right here at GBMWolverine, as we preview the Michigan defense. Eroc, overall strengths of this defense in your mind heading into the season?
The strength is, obviously, as we kind of talked about, is the linebackers in the secondary appear to really stand out. With having the entire back seven returning, this should be the strength. Having an experienced nickel guy in Avery should also help as well. Coach Madison being in his second year, that should help the defense out as well. The players know what to expect from him. They know what they're supposed to be doing. They can build on those schemes and add to them. That should also pay big dividends for the defense. Honestly, it's going to come down to, can that back seven help the front four? Last year, it was the front four with guys like Martin, Van Bergen that helped the back seven out. Now it's going to be a reversal.
We've reviewed the two deep chart for the defensive line, the backers, and the secondary. So how about your overall thoughts on this defense?
Some of the comments I already made, people might think, wow, he's really downgrading the defense, but really, I think this defense has a chance to be better than last season's, which was a pretty good defense, especially what we had in the past. Under the previous coach, we had all kinds of problems. But one thing fans need to remember is, with the tough schedule, the stats may not look as favorable as last year either. We're playing Alabama and Texas. We're going to Notre Dame. We play Nebraska at their place, and then we play Ohio State at their place as well. That's a pretty tough schedule, let alone being those 4 games on the road. So the other major factor is injuries. Last year, the team stayed pretty much injury-free for most or part of the football season. As we already seen the first couple weeks in practice, that's likely not going to repeat itself. So there's going to be players that need to step up that either have little game experience or none at all, such as true freshmen. They're the biggest wild card, in my opinion, right now, is how fast do the true freshmen learn the systems, step up, and if they get thrown out there, how well are they going to do?
I think for the first time in a while, heading into the season, analysts, fans, everyone have to say that this is the best Michigan defense we've had in, the last 4 or 5 years. We have to feel pretty good. There are always question marks. Everyone has question marks. Everyone has new players shuffling in every year, so you have the experience concerns, but overall, this defense looks like it should be a pretty darn good defense with a big upside.
Yes, it does, and you're right. And for Michigan fans, a lot of times when Michigan defense is good, we make them better than what they are. It says when they're bad, we make them worse than what they really are. So it's that counterbalance we need to find. I think they're going to be a very solid unit. You never really want to count on true freshmen as a lifesaver, but putting them in the water in the shallow end, as they say, seeing how they do, to push them out there and say, hey, kid, go out there. You're the starter. You're going to play, and we're counting on you. Now, that makes it tough for a true freshman. But this defense, I think, overall, should be a pretty damn good defense if, and it's a big if again, if that defense line can produce enough and have enough depth and rotation in there to help the back seven out. They need to stop the running game. That's the number one thing Coach Madison has preached from day one with his Michigan defense, as he calls it, stopping the run. And it all comes down to, it all starts with the big bodies up in the middle. The strength of the defense is up the middle. You got the big guys like Will Campbell and Black. You got Kenny Demmons, and you got the safeties, Thomas Gordon and Kovacs. It starts all up in the middle and then works its way out. If they're strong up the middle, usually you're pretty good throughout your whole defense. So it's going to start up front with Will Campbell and work its way back. If Will Campbell has the year that I think he's going to have, I think we're going to have a really solid defense. If he has, like he's had the last couple of years, we could struggle of stopping the run. And that's kind of scary, especially when you look at a team like Alabama who has the big offensive lineman, usually has a huge tailback that can run like a deer, and they're going to try and pound you. The week after is no lightweight either in Air Force. They're not a big, powerful team, but they like to run the ball a lot, and they run trick stuff a lot that most teams will never see the rest of the year. So that combination of those first two games, it's kind of a little scary on how our defense is going to be. We're going to find out a lot. Maybe not so much after the Alabama game, because everybody's got Alabama either winning the SEC, winning the national championship game, or they got them in there. For most Michigan fans, they're going to see that game, and if they win, expectations are going to go through the roof. If they lose, people are going to get down on the team. If they lose badly, they're going to say, oh no, what happened? So it's going to be interesting to see how this whole start of the season goes.
As always, it will be fascinating to see. And, Eroc, we thank you for joining us today on our defensive preview show as we took a look at the Michigan 2-deep chart and have decided, I think, after all, we have a pretty darn good defense that could, in the end, be a very good defense. So, Eroc, as usual, we look forward to having you back on the show once the season gets underway. And in my show notes, I will remind everyone to don't forget to become a member here at GBM Wolverine so you can be there for the Monday Night Live chat, all of the good stuff that we provide here on the site for you 7 days a week, and especially with the season getting underway, you want to make sure you're a member so you can get your maize and blue fix of information. Eric, thanks for joining us, and again, we're just a couple of weeks away, and we'll get you back on here and talk some football very shortly.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks again to our guest today, ErocWolverine, from right here at GBM Wolverine. For the best in Michigan football coverage this upcoming season, go to www.gbmwolverine and become a member today. Coming up next is Wolverine Quick Hits as we wrap it up for another week here on the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. On Wolverine Quick Hits today, the Michigan football team opens the season as a 2-touchdown underdog against the defending national champs. It could do so without a suspended starting tailback and defensive end. It's breaking in new starters at 6 of the 9 line positions. It must travel to face 3 ranked teams in the preseason AP Top 25 and a 4th, Notre Dame, that is 1 spot outside the poll. Bob Asmussen knows all of this, and yet he believes the Wolverines are the best team in the nation. Asmussen, an Illinois beat writer and longtime reporter for the Champaign News-Gazette, was the only voter in the country to give Michigan top billing in the preseason AP Top 25. The Wolverines finished number 8 overall in the poll, which was released on Saturday. So that's nice, but as Coach Brady Hoke has said over and over, he doesn't care about the polls this time of the year. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. So let's keep that in mind as we get ready for the big opener next week. Don't forget to become a member here at GBMW. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership. Benefits include daily email reminders when a story is published or a mailbag question is answered. You also need to become a member for full participation on our always interesting message board. As a member here on GBMW, you can also take part in our popular Monday Night Live chat with ErocWolverine, Coach BT, Maze Man, Doc for Blue, World's Wolverine, and our hockey guru, Yostmeister. The Monday Night Live chat is back now that the season has started, so check it out Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So join GBMW today and get your daily maize and blue fix of news and conversation. Visit www.gbmwolverine.com and sign up for membership today. Then each Wednesday you can listen to the Michigan Man Podcast. The show is now available as an Android app, which can be purchased from the Android App Store at Amazon.com. If you are an Apple person, you'll find our app in the iTunes App Store. If you listen to the show on your Apple device, please take a minute to give the show a review. It does help us a lot. Our listener lines are open 24/7 if you would like to call and leave a comment we can use on an upcoming show. Our number is 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Whatever's on your mind, the big opener with Bama, basketball recruiting, hockey, just give us a call and state your name, where you're calling from, and then give us your 2 cents worth. If you would rather not leave a voicemail but still have a comment or suggestion for the show, just email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. I welcome your thoughts and opinions on anything maize and blue. Thanks again to our guest today, our very own ErocWolverine, from right here at GBMWolverine, as we previewed the Michigan defense. I think at this point it's fair to say we are previewed out. Since January, we've been talking about the improvements Denard needs to make. Will the offensive line be able to replace David Molk? Who will Denard throw to? Can Coach Madison replace Van Bergen and Mike Martin on that defensive front? Is this the year Will Campbell answers the bell? Very soon we will have some answers to those and many other questions. Next week, it's finally time to talk Michigan versus Alabama. On that show, we'll get the inside scoop on the Crimson Tide from Matt Scalici, who covers the Tide for Alabama.com and hosts the Alabama Football Podcast. We've asked Frank Beckman to join us on the show, but he's a busy guy, so hopefully he can squeeze a few minutes in for us. If not Frank, rest assured we'll have one of our Wolverine beat writers on with their take on the big opener. So it's finally here, months and months of speculation, worry, and anticipation about to come to an end a week from Saturday down in Arlington, as the defending national champions from Alabama take on number 8 Michigan. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday, August 29th, for our big season opening show. Tell all of your maize and blue friends and mark it on the calendar. Until then, I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great week, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for listening to the Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine. You can find us on the web at www.gbmwolverine.com. That's www.gbmwolverine.com. For audio posts or other fan feedback, please call our listener line at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Email fan feedback to the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. That's the Michigan Man Podcast at yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast on GBMW Go Blue Michigan Wolverine is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan. The Michigan Man Podcast is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!